Welcome to another edition of Crime News with Mark Solomon. It is Wednesday, October 27, 2021. We've got a long episode today. We're going to be talking a tiny bit about Brian Laundrie. There's a minor update on the judge in Colorado, Mark Thompson. We're going to be talking about Barry Morphew's case quite a bit. A lot of things to talk about there. And lastly, we're going to be talking about Alec Baldwin and the shooting that he was involved in. Stay tuned. Brian Laundrie and Gabby Petito. Now, hours after my last video, it was confirmed that the remains found in the national preserves in Florida were in fact Mr. Laundrie's. So he is deceased. And the authorities are saying that he was likely not the person in his mother's car, that he had probably already been deceased when that car was found, and it was probably his mother as the driver. The Northport Police Department said on Tuesday that Brian Laundrie was likely dead when they mistook his mother for him in September. So for the sake of a preserved timeline, that's good to note. The police admit they made a mistake early on in the Brian Laundrie case. The rumors that the Northport police wanted to dispel was that there had been no DNA matching Laundrie to those remains. The remains had been confirmed through dental records. Next, a minor update in the Mark Thompson case. That's the judge who was charged with felony menacing here in Colorado, punishable by up to 3 years. This is a case that took 3 months to file, but it was filed a week ago, and Judge Thompson was the presiding judge of the 5th Judicial District. And as of 2 days ago, he has been removed from his judicial duties. And this is by Judge Dinkelman, who is the new chief judge of the 5th Judicial District. And he does this because his decisions will always be based on what he believes is in the best interest of the district council and, most importantly, the community. And at this time, he believes that this is the right decision. Next, let's talk about the Barry Morphew case. That's a case here in Colorado where Barry Morphew was accused of murdering his wife. Just to bring you up to speed, he was accused of this when his wife went missing on May 10th. There was a major investigation. Dive rescue teams were involved. The Chaffee County Sheriff's Department was involved. His home was cordoned off that first week or two. The search continued for months. Eventually, the investigation turned towards Barry Morphew, and eventually on May 5th, Barry Morphew was arrested. And if you don't remember, most of this case is circumstantial. There's a lot of good, strong evidence there. There was a 4-day preliminary hearing, which is quite extensive. There was a 131-page affidavit, which we did do a video on about a month ago when it was finally released to the public. And the new developments are, first and foremost, the lead prosecutor, Jeff Lindsay, has resigned. He is leaving the 11th Judicial District to take a job in Pueblo in the 10th Judicial District. Now, remember, that's about 3 hours south of Denver. He was the lead prosecutor in the preliminary hearing. He's probably the one who approved the affidavit for the arrest warrant. And this was confirmed through the district attorney's offices. And the press release from the Pueblo District Attorney's Office, and her quote was that they've had several openings and were most fortunate to obtain Jeff's services. Interesting, because now they have to find another prosecutor to take over this case, come up to speed, and handle everything from the prosecution standpoint. There are currently 4 other prosecutors on the Morphew case, and the district attorney, Linda Stanley, said that they plan to bring in more before the trial, and his trial is set for May of 2022. But the next thing of interest is we had a viewer ask me just a few days ago on Twitter, can you do an update in the interesting turn of events where Barry Morphew's attorneys are threatening to sue the investigators with false arrest and defamation? And the answer to that is absolutely. Let's do it now. Barry Morphew's attorneys are announcing their intention to sue the investigators for false arrest and defamation, according to this Gazette article. Links are in the description below. And this comes after a lengthy evidence hearing. That's the preliminary hearing where the judge ruled that there was probable cause, and that's why he is now going to be standing trial in the death of his wife. The attorneys allege deputies and prosecutors withheld the identity of a person tied to DNA found on the glove box of Suzanne Morphew's Range Rover. Here's another article where that intent to sue the district attorney and investigators for malicious prosecution October 18, Fisher and Bryelson, PLLC, a Denver and New York law firm, filed notice of a claim on behalf of Morphew. He was arrested May 5. The 49-year-old Chaffee County woman went missing on Mother's Day. Her body has not been found. The letter by the law firm claims that the affidavit presented to the judge to arrest Morphew without bond omits evidence of alternate suspects, exculpatory DNA evidence, and contains misleading and false information. Let's unpack that a little bit. Remember that when a judge is ruling on the issue of probable cause, what he's trying to rule on is two things: whether a reasonable person could believe that a crime was committed, and is this the person who committed it? And when the judge does that, what they're trying to do is fill a cup with evidence that suggests that probable cause. In the past, a lot of judges would not hear defense witnesses at a preliminary hearing. And the reason they thought is that this is not about the defense poking holes in the prosecution. That's what the trial is for. A preliminary hearing is just to show whether or not enough evidence exists to support the charges. And when you have a defense witness trying to present evidence, it's simply irrelevant. Now, recent case law in Colorado shows that a defense does have the right to present evidence of countervailing theories and exculpatory information at a preliminary hearing. Whether or not a judge uses that is a different story. When you look at that standard of evidence, that they're trying to ensure that the judge has enough information, that enough evidence exists to support the charges, whether or not they admitted that information of DNA evidence for alternate suspects, that's not probably going to make a difference. What would be more problematic is misleading and false information in the scope of getting that arrest warrant or in presenting the preliminary hearing evidence. That would be a huge problem. It's an ethical problem for any attorney to do that, number one, and that might present a problem which could result in sanctions in the case. But that's in the civil case. And if those civil sanctions can be brought up in the criminal case, that could be a problem for the prosecution, and especially when they have a lack of continuity with the leading prosecutor, again, that might be problematic. The press release goes on to say that the affidavit fails to reveal that there's unknown male DNA found on evidence collected in the case, including Suzanne's bike, helmet, sheets in the dryer, one of the bedrooms, and her car. It is alleged in the letter that sometime in the beginning of August, investigators have become aware of the name and the individual whose DNA partially matched a sample collected from her car, and that letter alleges that the individual is also a registered sex offender in Arizona. Remember that some of the evidence that came out in the preliminary hearing was DNA on the car's dashboard, and I had done at least one or two videos on that subject that I didn't find that very compelling, because when somebody is in your car, if they're doing any sort of repairs, anything, if they touch something, scrape themselves, sneeze, cough, whatever, they're going to leave DNA behind. But that also makes me wonder that, since that evidence did come out during the preliminary hearing and it's just being alleged in the probable cause affidavit, is that truly a problem? My gut feeling is no, but I'd love to hear your comments. Put them in the comments below. What do you think about that? Do you think that withholding evidence on the issue of probable cause in an affidavit, but then addressing it in the preliminary hearing, if that's a problem, I'd like to know what you think. Another really important thing to point out is that Barry Morphew and his attorneys are announcing their intent to sue the state in the form of the district attorney investigators, the sheriff's department, and other law enforcement agencies. And all of these entities are protected by governmental immunity, qualified immunity, and the like. And to overcome that burden, they're going to have to show that they did not act within well-established principles of law. And that might be a huge problem. That's the first hurdle they're going to have to overcome. Now, with today's world of police accountability, that might not be as difficult as it has been in years past, but there have been very recent cases by the U.S. Supreme Court where they have declined to address any sort of cracks in governmental immunity cases. I think they are probably in the scope of trying to keep governmental immunity as a more conservative court. That's just my opinion, though. What is your thought? Let me know in the comments below. Anyway, his next court appearance is set for November 9. We'll keep you updated on that. Next, huge issue. Let's talk about the homicide in Alec Baldwin's movie Rust. If you don't know, filming Rust in New Mexico, and while shooting a gun scene, Alec Baldwin accidentally shot and killed cinematographer Halyna Hutchins on the set of the movie that he's filming, and the director Joel Souza was also wounded but recovering. So the first thing that people have asked me to talk about was whether or not there's any civil liability. And the answer is, I would bet that there is. It's called negligence. Civil liability. And remember, I am not the guy to ask about civil liability. I am a criminal defense attorney. But what I do know about it is fairly rudimentary. 4 elements. You have to have a duty to the person. You have to breach that duty to that person. And that breach has to be the cause of damages. So in this case, going through the elements, at some point, the movie set company had a duty to provide these firearms in a safe way for the filming. Clearly, they had a duty to their actors, film crew, and even the equipment companies that provided the equipment to do that. That duty was clearly breached when a gun was brought on set with live ammunition, and we're going to talk about that in just a second. But that breach, by allowing that gun to be on the set with live ammunition, causing that unsafe situation, was clearly the cause of some extraordinarily grave damages, and that was the cause of those damages. Fox Business spoke with personal injury attorney Krista Ramey, who is not working on the case about the incident. Quote, "You would be suing Alec Baldwin's production company, and its insurance company will defend. Alec Baldwin, the actor, will not be personally responsible for anything." But remember, he is a producer on this film, so I would assume that he would probably be included in the suit as a producer. But would he be personally liable? Probably not. That's what they have insurance for. Next thing is, why was there live ammunition on the set? And I got to tell you, I have a personal problem with all the articles that I've been reading talking about a prop gun. This was not a prop gun. Anybody who calls a gun capable of firing live ammunition as a prop gun is just categorically wrong. Any gun that can fire live ammunition is a real gun. A prop gun is a fake gun that looks like a real gun, but cannot fire ammunition. Maybe a prop gun can be used to fire blanks, but not real bullets. Mrs. Carmack Altwise took issue with the descriptions of the firearm used in the incident as a prop gun, saying that the terminology, which is used in some courts to document related to the case, could give misleading impression that it was not a real gun. It was a legit gun, she said, without naming specifically what kind of firearm was used. It was an antique era appropriate gun. My guess would be a Colt single action. Either way, it fired real bullets, not a prop gun. And in this case, there was an allegation that the crew had loaded that gun with live bullets that day for target practice. Just hours before the fatal incident, a group of crew members had taken the firearm to go plinking, which they shoot beer cans with live ammunition amid a production where Alec Baldwin's flick Rust in Santa Fe, an insider told The Wrap. And so you've got this situation where every single movie production set has an armor if it involves a gun. Any guns, they're going to have an armorer on set. That armorer is tasked with a couple of responsibilities I've read from all the articles this week. One of those duties is to keep those guns in a safe manner so that nobody gets hurt. Part of what they also have to do is to train any actor in safe gun handling. I've even read articles that even when you have a prop gun, you still never aim a prop gun or a movie gun at anybody, any crew, any equipment, because that's just not good, safe gun handling. And anybody who's had anything to do with the gun world knows of the 4 basic rules of gun safety: that you don't point a gun at anything unless you want to kill or destroy it. You don't put your finger on the trigger unless you're ready to fire. You know your target and what's beyond it, and you treat all guns as if they are loaded. And in this case, apparently, about a half dozen rules were all broken, because another movie set rule is before a gun is put into play, the armorer checks to make sure it's safe, it's confirmed by another person, and then it is given to the actor. And that did not happen here. So from what I'm reading, and remember, I'm not prejudging anything, I'm only going by the facts that I'm reading in the news, but what I'm seeing says that there are a lot of breaks in the chain of safety. And when you have one person looking at a gun and then handing it to an actor saying that it's a cold gun, which is what all the articles are saying, that's a huge problem. When you have an actor who doesn't necessarily know about guns, but trusts the people he's working with and they're not doing what they're supposed to do, that's a huge problem. When you have a film crew that brings live ammo onto set, whether it's in a gun or not. I know that some of the other articles that are coming out are whether or not there are going to be any criminal cases. So let's talk about that. Anytime you have that sort of negligence, it's called criminal negligence, possibly. And when there is clearly a case for civil negligence, there might also be a case for criminal negligence. And that type of case is something that's being looked into right now. In fact, the district attorney says that they are looking into possible criminal charges for that shooting. They say it could take weeks, but the investigation has begun. Most of what they're looking at so far is ballistics in an effort to determine what kind of round was in the gun that killed Halyna Hutchins, the cinematographer, and who had placed the ammunition in the gun. There have been a lot of stories. Alfred Hitchcock has even done a movie where there have been murders committed on movie sets in the guise of filming. However, I don't think there's any allegation that anybody on set was trying to murder anybody. This is not a murder case. If anything, I think this is going to be prosecuted as a reckless homicide, possibly, or negligent homicide. Those are legitimate charges, and I think that's probably where these cases are going. But let's talk a little bit about what they're doing right now. There are enormous amounts of bullets on the set. We need to find out what kinds they were, said the district attorney. Detectives said that they had recovered 3 revolvers, spent casings, and ammunition in boxes loose and in a fanny pack while executing a search warrant on the set. So remember, they're doing search warrants, and that's kind of a big deal when they're trying to figure out what happened in a homicide. They're not going to leave any stone unturned. The inventory did not specify what kind of ammunition was found on the set. Mr. Baldwin then rehearsed a scene that involved cross-drawing a revolver and pointing it toward the camera lens, according to the affidavit, when the gun fired, striking Miss Hutchins in the chest and killing her, and hitting the director of the film, Joel Souza, in the shoulder, wounding him. Terrible situation that never should have been able to happen. There have been a lot of pro-gun, anti-gun rhetoric going back on the internet. I'm not getting into that. But as far as the legal issues, anytime you pick up a gun, you are subjecting yourself to some kind of liability. It doesn't matter if it's a real gun or a fake gun. It doesn't matter if you're threatening somebody with it. If your handling of a gun puts somebody in fear, you can be charged with a felony. If a gun discharges, then you can be charged with a knowing or reckless discharge of a weapon. There are many municipalities who can charge you with simply discharge of a weapon, even if it was an accidental discharge. Let's say you drop a gun that happens to be loaded. It happens to go off. That's something you can be charged with. I can't tell you how many times I've defended a client who's had a gun that went off. Sometimes it hits people. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes they're charged with discharging a weapon from a vehicle. Sometimes it's inside an apartment or a house. Doesn't matter. Anytime a gun goes off, you are subject to some serious liability, be it civil or criminal. And that's unfortunately something that should have been prevented by policy, by industry or trade convention, that they should have had 2 people looking at that gun before it was passed off to the actor. The fact that real ammunition was anywhere near that set with real guns being called prop guns, so many things going here. And, you know, my heart goes out to this actor whose actions caused the death of another human being. Just a heartbreaking circumstance. But that's all we've got for you today. If you've got any thoughts, feelings, comments, or anything you'd like me to talk about, love to talk about it. Put them in the comments below. And until then, thank you so much for watching.